Hello, welcome to another episode of the Chaplain's Den, where I take your questions about Christianity, the faith, the Bible, whatever it may be, and try to answer them as simply and honestly as I can. So today, I just got back from vacation. We were away for a little bit, and we were in an area, a really nice area. We were in a cottage area by the beach, and it's a great area to get away because there's no Wi-Fi, no internet, no cell phone. No, you can just escape from everything for a while, and it's a little awkward at first. The first couple of nights, it's a little takes some getting used to, but once you get into it, boys, it is nice to get away. So anyway, when I got back, got the huge news. As soon as I went on the computer, got the news that Hulk Hogan had passed away. Now, if you don't know who Hulk Hogan is, and there's not many people that I would think would, he was quite likely the most famous wrestler of all time. For people of my generation, we grew up with this iconic figure who really, whether he was your favorite or not, he was kind of the biggest. He was front and center. He was the guy that, for so many of us, was like a hero and a mentor. He was the guy, when things were going wrong, he was the guy that kept going. When things were terrible, when people were doing terrible things, he was the guy who resisted them. He was the guy, if other people were in trouble, you'd get, if you ever follow wrestling, I mean, it has the drama to it. There's not just the wrestling matches, but the storylines and the drama. So you'd see a situation where maybe three guys were attacking one guy, and you'd be like, oh, who's going to help them? And it would seem to get worse and worse and worse. And then all of a sudden you'd hear the music, and here would come Hulk Hogan. Here would come the Hulkster down to right the wrong. And I think that's what the best memories that I have of him would be those situations. I can remember times where bad things would be happening in the ring, and even after he had left, and people would be calling Hogan. There's just, in some ways it's similar to Christianity, because it's kind of that hope beyond hope. There's always the hope that somebody somewhere can fix this situation. And Hogan was, he he was a great role model, really was. Great role model for young guys and kids of that time period, talking about, training yourself and taking the vitamins and saying the prayers, and you hear a lot of negative. Unfortunately, there's a lot of criticism about how he lived his life. and he's talked a lot about that through the years too. And unfortunately, with his passing away, this brings up the question: is Hulk Hogan in heaven? And one thing that we deal with a lot is as anybody who's a pastor, a priest, or a minister, you always have that difficult question where somebody passes away and somebody who cares about them will ask, do you think they're in heaven? Are they in heaven today? They want that reassurance. They want that comfort. Excuse me. And I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give people is that very fact. It's so wonderful when you know that they're a Christian and you can say, yeah, undoubtedly, we know. I have some family members. I don't doubt for a second that they're in heaven today. And that's an absolute blessing. There's some that I'm not sure. So the question that comes about with Hogan is largely because, he was in this business that was very dog eat dog. I mean, it still is today. But he grew up in the old school, which is really Wild West. I mean, there was a time that there wasn't cameras everywhere. There was a lot of things that happened in the background, and of course politics, and we know that, and like many celebrities who are on top of their game, who are, Hogan, more than any wrestler, I mean, he was known by everybody. There's a lot of wrestlers that are huge, and fans of wrestling know their names, know all about them. Hogan was one of those guys. If you didn't watch wrestling, you knew nothing about wrestling. People knew Hulk Hogan. They just knew the charismatic personality that comes through in everything he does. The impressive appearance, the physique, everything. Right? He just seemed to have the total package in that way. And because of that, he means a lot to a lot of people. Now, people will say, well, Hulk Hogan's not a real person, it's a character, and that's true. There's a real person. Terry Bollea, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is the man who portrayed Hogan. And they're different. Of course, they're different people. They intermix, but it's a very different thing. But in the simple thing, and one of my friends asked me, because that impacts, I think, a lot of us. That impacted. We've seen so many of the older generation of wrestlers pass away, and unfortunately many of them quite young, and in comparison to the health issues they have because they're so hard on their body, both from the wrestling and from the lifestyle that surrounded it. And Hogan, we know, was all part of that. We know he was all part of that too. He was part of the drinking and the drugs and all the partying and sex and adultery and everything else, right? So, like I say, right away, my friend's like, is Hogan in heaven? And, I think I can say, now it's not my place to judge. It's not my place to judge. That's entirely, only Jesus can do that. The Bible tells us that only Jesus can do that. I don't have the ability to judge. I mean, I don't even know the man personally, so I definitely can't. But I think that I can say, like, it's funny. There's a couple of other celebrities that have passed away, and if somebody asked me, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about if they had any faith, if they've ever considered it. Hogan, thankfully, has come out, and he's declared himself a Christian. It's interesting. He goes back, and he said, I think when he was like 14, he became a Christian, which is very similar to my story, where it's like, I was a Christian when I was younger, but then it's like I didn't really live it. It didn't define me. I didn't, I didn't kick it to the curb. I didn't put it away. I didn't despise it. I didn't reject it, but it wasn't in my top list of priorities. So then you ask, well, are you even really a Christian? And Hogan had the same issue where he looks back, was I a Christian? And I just hadn't really, woken up to it as much, or was I just lying to myself in the past, calling myself a Christian, but never living it because you don't live it? So it was just a few years ago that he came out and announced that he had made the profession of faith. He had been publicly baptized. Very important things for a Christian. I think there's an aspect where we want the world to know. We're not trying to push it on the world, but we want to know that this is what I'm defined by. And he became that person, I believe, where you see a difference. You see where in the past he's always playing a role, and he's always responding to things a certain way. I was watching the video today that was supposedly his last interview, and you see a man he's very humble. He's answering the questions just openly and honestly. He's not worried about how it's going to be seen or what agendas or, politics and all this, that, and the other thing. He's just answering the questions. He has become a person who is now content and at peace with themselves, and he is more interested in being truthful than anything else. And I think those are great signs of a man who is actually truly a Christian. Now, people say, oh, yes, but we know all the bad stuff that he did in the past. And that's the great thing about Christianity, because you know what? That's gone. The slate's wiped clean. It's not the fact that he didn't do those things. It's not the fact that he didn't sin. But Jesus pays for those sins. And, there's a difference. People will say, well, don't they continue to sin? And we've talked about this before. Christians will always continue to trip up. So I look at it like, there's a time where you're not listening and you're jumping into the mud. Well, you're doing that purposely. That's a whole different thing. There's times where after you might trip occasionally and fall into the mud. Well, you're getting dirty, but you didn't do it on purpose. You messed up. And that's something that Christians will always do. So did he become perfect? No, he didn't become perfect. But his past doesn't matter. His past doesn't define him. And that's the great thing about it, is that, I believe totally from what I've seen of him, that he became a genuine Christian. And so when somebody says, do you think that Hulk Hogan's in heaven? I don't doubt it. It's not my call to make. But I think, if you're family, if you're a friend, if you're somebody that grew up with this man, and he's, and I'm not saying this as a fan. I'm not saying it as a fan that he's, I'm not being biased in that way. There's many people that I've been a fan of, you look through music or different things, that they've never considered Christianity at all. I remember one guy, they were talking about, oh, he's in heaven now. And I'm thinking, he's been so blatantly against it his whole life. I think he would honestly be, well, I mean, sadly, the sad reality, if he's in the other place, obviously he would be regretting that. But I think if you could ask him before that, he would be the first one to tell you, I don't want anybody saying I'm in heaven. I don't want anybody saying that I'm mixed up in that. He resisted it openly all his life. So it is hard, because like I say, there's people that always say, oh, are they in heaven? And you can't be like, well, no, he went out partying, like how many times does that happen where they went out literally overdosing on their sins and stuff, right? So yeah, it's great when you can have somebody that you care about and respect and know. I believe that he is now at peace. I believe that he is home with Christ, and that's an incredible thing for somebody who, he's had a great life and he's had a hard life too. And that's one of the reasons why we can't judge him, because I mean, he obviously had so many opportunities and temptations that most people would never have. So many decisions that he had to make that were part of his world. But that's all behind him. And that's the hope that we have in Christ, is that we can leave all that stuff behind. And okay, if people are going to criticize him, they're going to criticize him. Doesn't change where he is. Doesn't change, he's chosen his path, and he's at his destination, I truly believe. So God bless. For all those Hulkamaniacs out there, I know it means something to you. I hope this message helps. God bless you on your journey. I hope you make the same decisions. And this has been the Chaplain's Den. Thanks for tuning in.